My father forgot to hang up the phone, and 3 minutes later I learned what my place in the family had always been. I heard my mother say, "Alex will keep paying because being useful is the closest thing she has to feeling loved." My father laughed and answered, "She's too scared of losing the family to ever make us leave." They were standing in the kitchen of the house my grandmother had left to me. They had never paid the mortgage, taxes, insurance, or major repairs. My younger brother's $96,000 hill country wedding was still moving forward, partly because I covered nearly every expense my parents claimed they could not afford. My parents were leaving for a 5-week anniversary trip through Italy and France that weekend, with upgraded airfare I had helped pay for. While discussing Florence hotels, they were also discussing how to pressure me into adding their names to my home after they returned. My father had already borrowed money based on the assumption that the house would eventually become his. I said nothing. 5 weeks later, when they rolled their luggage up the front walk smiling from Rome, their key opened a house that no longer belonged to any of us. My name is Alexandra Mercer, although everyone except my mother calls me Alex. I was 34 when this happened, and I worked as the Regional Operations Director for a pediatric rehabilitation network in San Antonio, Texas. My job involved coordinating 6 clinics, hundreds of employees, therapy schedules, medical equipment, staffing shortages, insurance problems, building repairs, transportation programs, and every ordinary failure that could prevent a child from receiving care on time. I was good at remaining calm when other people panicked. I could sit inside a conference room while 3 department heads argued about a missing authorization and reduce the problem to 6 steps on a whiteboard. I could negotiate with vendors, restructure staffing during flu season, and find temporary solutions when a clinic's air conditioning failed in August. People at work often told me I made difficult situations feel manageable. My family discovered that talent much earlier and turned it into my assigned role. I grew up outside Houston with my parents, Patricia and Mark Mercer, and my younger brother Dylan. Dylan was 4 years younger than me and had the kind of personality adults forgave before he apologized. He was funny, expressive, creative, handsome, and permanently in the middle of some new version of himself. When we were children, he wanted to be a drummer, then a skateboard photographer, then an entrepreneur who sold custom t-shirts from our garage. At 16, he convinced 3 neighborhood families to pay deposits for lawn care, and then forgot 2 houses during the second week. My mother said he had vision without systems. When I was 16 and forgot to submit one permission form for a school trip, she said responsibility was a choice, and disappointment was the natural result. That difference followed us into adulthood. Dylan's mistakes were evidence that his talents needed support. Mine were evidence that I should have known better. If he forgot chores, Mom said his mind moved too quickly. If I complained about doing mine and his, she said, "You've always been more mature." If Dylan needed new soccer cleats because everyone else had a newer model, my parents found the money. When I wanted an SAT preparation course, Mom suggested I work extra hours at the grocery store because you value things more when you earn them. I did. I worked Friday evenings and Sundays while keeping my grades high enough for scholarship applications. I learned early that needing less made adults proud of me, but being proud of me was not the same as giving to me. My grandmother Eleanor lived in San Antonio in a 1930s Spanish Revival house in Alamo Heights. White stucco walls, red clay roof tiles, dark wooden beams, saltillo floors, and a tiny courtyard where she grew rosemary, jasmine, and tomatoes in mismatched pots. My mother was her only daughter, but Eleanor and Patricia had a complicated relationship. Grandma believed my mother cared too much about appearances. My mother believed Grandma enjoyed judging people who wanted nicer things. I spent several weeks with Eleanor every summer after I turned 11. She taught me to cook enchiladas without measuring spices, how to repair a loose button, how to keep household records, and how to say no without writing an essay afterward. I was bad at the last lesson. "You explain too much," she told me once when I was 19, and feeling guilty for refusing to loan Dylan money for concert tickets. "You think if people fully understand your reasons, they'll grant you permission to have a boundary. Shouldn't family understand?" Good family tries. Entitled Family Studies Your Explanation for Weak Points. At 19, I thought the sentence was unnecessarily suspicious. At 34, I could hear it in her voice, like she was sitting beside me. Grandma died when I was 30. She had been 81, sharp until the last few months, and stubborn enough to live alone until a fall finally convinced her to accept part-time help. Her death devastated me in a way I had not expected. She had been the only older person in my family who asked what I wanted before telling me what I should do. At the reading of her estate plan, we learned she had left the San Antonio house to me. She left my mother cash, jewelry, and investments worth a respectable amount. Dylan received a smaller trust and Grandma's vintage pickup truck, which he sold within 4 months. The house came to me alone. My mother smiled too quickly when the attorney explained it. Of course, she said. Alex always loved that place. My father put one hand on my shoulder. Your grandmother knew you'd take care of it, Dylan joked. Guess I know where Thanksgiving is forever. Nobody objected. Later that evening, my mother called. I just want you to know I'm not hurt. Okay. Some mothers would be. About what? The house. She was my mother. She left you almost $300,000. Money isn't sentimental. Neither is a deed. Silence. I'm saying I hope you don't interpret this as Grandma choosing you over me. I didn't. Good, because she sometimes used money to make points. That should have prepared me. Instead, I spent the next year renovating the house gently. I replaced old plumbing, repaired the roof, upgraded electrical panels, restored the original windows, and kept the courtyard nearly exactly as Eleanor left it. I moved in after my apartment lease ended. For the first time in my adult life, I had a home with no roommate, landlord, or family member controlling what happened inside it. 11 months later, my father lost his consulting contract. He had retired from a corporate sales job 2 years earlier, but still accepted occasional work because my parents had spent more freely than they should have. My mother called one evening sounding exhausted. We may need to sell the Houston house before the market improves. That might be smart if you're downsizing. Your father isn't sleeping. I'm sorry. We were thinking maybe we could stay with you for a few months, while we figure out where we want to retire. I stared through the courtyard doors. Both of you? Obviously. How long? 3 months. 6 at the absolute most. What about Dylan? Why would Dylan come? I'm asking because every temporary family arrangement becomes everyone's arrangement. She laughed as though I were making a joke. You worry too much. They moved in 3 weeks later. 6 months passed. Then 1 year. Then 2. Temporary became a word everyone stopped using. My parents never paid rent. At first, my father contributed groceries and insisted on covering the water bill. My mother bought curtains for the guest room and a new rug for the living room without asking. They slowly moved through the house like water finding low ground. Grandma's reading chair went into my office because Dad wanted his leather recliner facing the television. The courtyard table I loved was replaced with a 6-person outdoor dining set because Mom said mine looked college. Her framed prints appeared in the hall. My grandmother's pottery disappeared into a cabinet because Patricia preferred coordinated dishes when people visited. I told myself these were compromises required when adults lived together. I had invited them. They were my parents. They had raised me. Why would I turn furniture into a war? The financial part expanded just as quietly. Dad stopped paying the water bill after 6 months because prescription costs increased. I added their supplemental medical insurance to my automatic payments after Mom missed a deadline. I covered a major dental bill. Their car needed repairs. Then tires. Then registration. My mother's phone plan became part of mine because bundling saved money. When the air conditioning compressor failed, I paid $11,000 because the house was mine. When my parents wanted the guest bathroom remodeled because the tub was difficult for Dad to step over, I paid for a walk-in shower because that genuinely made sense. The requests rarely sounded unreasonable individually. That was the trick. Exploitation rarely arrives saying, "Give me your life." It arrives as Tuesday's bill, Thursday's emergency, Saturday's small favor, and one recurring payment nobody remembers beginning. Dylan learned the arrangement quickly. He had moved to Austin and built a small event production company specializing in corporate launches, private parties, proposal setups, and social media-friendly experiences. He was talented. That is important. Dylan was not a useless parasite who had never worked. He could walk into an empty warehouse and imagine lighting, music, furniture, and movement. He was excellent with clients. He was also terrible at cash flow, deadlines, taxes, and anything that did not provide immediate emotional reward. Every year produced a crisis. A client delayed payment. A vendor demanded a deposit. A trailer needed repairs. A photographer canceled. An employee quit. Mom called me because Dylan was too embarrassed to call himself. He only needs $2,800 until the Johnson event closes. Did he repay the last $3,000? You know his business has been difficult. That isn't an answer. Alex, he is trying. So am I. Nobody said you aren't. Then why does trying cost me money only when Dylan does it? That usually ended with Patricia becoming quiet and Dad calling later. Your mother is upset. I know. She worries about Dylan. I know. You're more stable. I know. Would helping really hurt you? That question kept me trapped longer than direct demands would have. Would helping hurt? Usually no. One transfer did not destroy me. One bill did not change retirement. One emergency did not prevent groceries. But thousands of harmless individual favors can still build a harmful life. Dylan met his fiancée, Camille Reynolds, while producing a corporate dinner at her family's winery near Fredericksburg. Camille managed brand partnerships and private events for the property. She was polished, warm, ambitious, and fluent in the language of social media. Nothing simply happened in Camille's world. It became a story, a carousel, a reel, or a brand moment. When Dylan proposed beneath oak trees at sunset, 3 cameras captured it from different angles. My mother knew about the proposal before Camille did. I learned from Instagram because Dylan had forgotten to call. Patricia commented, "Our baby is building his beautiful future." I texted Dylan congratulations. He called 2 days later. "You're not mad, are you?" "About what?" "Finding out online?" I would have preferred a call. It happened fast. The photographer had 3 camera angles. He laughed. "Okay, fair. I'm happy for you. You sound like HR. I'm at work. Camille thinks you don't like her." I had met Camille twice. I barely know her. Exactly. Somehow, I ended the call apologizing. The wedding became a family project immediately. It would happen at the winery the following spring. Initially, Dylan described it as intimate. 90 guests, dinner under string lights, live music, family-style tables. Within 4 months, the guest list reached 200. A welcome party appeared. Then a farewell brunch. Then specialty lighting, custom lounge furniture, additional tents, a cigar bar for Dylan's clients, designer floral installations, transportation from hotels, and a fireworks permit. Dylan called every increase part wedding, part portfolio. Camille believed the photographs could bring high-end event clients to both of them. My parents became obsessed. My mother created spreadsheets she rarely used for her own bills. Dad toured rental companies. They promised to cover the rehearsal dinner, guest shuttles, and several accommodations. I asked how. "We have savings," Patricia said. "You said retirement funds were tight. Not everything needs to be discussed with you. Then don't ask me to cover your insurance every month." She stared at me. "That is completely separate." It was not. My support allowed them to treat their own available money as wedding money. I realized that only slowly. First, Mom asked me to handle an $8,600 property tax bill because her investment account had timing issues. I paid because it was my house anyway. The following week, she posted from Fredericksburg. "Rehearsal tasting with our boy. So grateful we can give him the celebration he deserves." Then Dad needed new hearing aids their plan did not fully cover. I paid the difference. 2 weeks later, Dylan texted the family group. "Mom and Dad just saved the transportation plan. Legends." I stared at that word. Legends. My money was paying enough of their life that they could appear generous with theirs. Still, I said nothing. Camille asked me to review the vendor budget because you're the only person who can make numbers behave. I spent 3 evenings fixing duplicate charges, missing taxes, and a transportation estimate that did not match the guest count. I saved them almost $9,000. She texted, "You are a lifesaver." Later, she posted a planning photograph tagging Patricia, her mother, her sister, and 3 bridesmaids. The women making this dream happen. I was not tagged. That should not have mattered. It did. Then came the engagement dinner. Camille's parents hosted both families at the winery. I drove from San Antonio after work, brought a gift, and stayed at a hotel because all winery rooms had been assigned to immediate family. During sunset photographs, the photographer called for the Reynolds family, then the Mercer family. I stepped forward when Dylan did. Camille's coordinator held up one finger. "First, we're doing the core household. I'm his sister. Then we'll add siblings." The core photograph included Dylan, Camille, Patricia, Mark, Camille's parents, and Camille's younger sister. I waited. Then grandparents joined. Then wedding party. Then light changed. "We'll grab siblings at the reception," the coordinator said. Nobody did. The next morning, my mother posted the core photograph with the caption, "Two families, one future." I was sitting in an airport cafe when I saw it. I wrote, "Beautiful night." 5 minutes later, the comment disappeared. Patricia called. "Why did you comment that?" "Because it was beautiful. People can tell you weren't in the photo." "I wasn't." "You're making this awkward. By existing outside the frame?" There. That tone. Dylan was right. About what? That you've been weird about the wedding because attention isn't on you. I looked around the airport. Travelers rolled suitcases past me. A child cried near the gate. My coffee tasted burnt. I spent 9 hours reviewing their budget. Because you're good at numbers, that doesn't mean every contribution requires public recognition. I didn't ask for recognition. You noticed. Yes, Mom. I noticed I wasn't considered family for the family photograph. But people who have been trained to protect relationships often apologize, not because they believe they are wrong, but because conflict feels more dangerous than self-betrayal. The wedding budget kept growing. 6 weeks before the ceremony, Dylan called directly for money instead of routing the request through Mom. "I need a favor." "How much?" "Why do you always start there?" "Because your favors usually have numbers." 12,000. I laughed. "No, you didn't even ask why." "Because there is no reason that turns 12,000 into a small favor." The lighting company changed terms. "Reduce lighting. We already designed the tent around it." "Change the design. Camille's parents have covered way more than they planned." "Then reduce the wedding." Silence. "You really don't want this to happen, do you?" "I want you to get married. I do not care whether the tent has architectural lighting. This event affects my career." "Then your business can pay for its marketing." "You know it can't right now." "That is the problem." He hung up. My mother called within 10 minutes. "You humiliated your brother." "How?" "You told him his business cannot support his life. He asked me for $12,000. You have it. That does not answer why I owe it." Nobody said oh. "Then no." She began crying. "Your brother gets one wedding. Everyone gets the wedding they can afford." "You have always been jealous of how easily people love Dylan." The sentence hit because it contained truth shaped into a weapon. I was jealous, not of his wedding, of the effortless warmth he received before producing anything. "Maybe," I said. My mother went silent. She had expected denial. "Maybe what?" "Maybe I am jealous that he gets to make mistakes and remain lovable while I have to be useful." That is dramatic nonsense. Is it? You have always been loved. When was the last time you called without needing something? She hung up. My father came into my room later that evening. He and Mom had been living in my house for nearly 4 years by then. He leaned against the doorframe. "You know how she gets." "Yes. She doesn't mean everything she says." "Why does that always become my problem?" Because you're reasonable. I laughed. That word means cheaper than confronting her. Alex. Did you hear her tell me I'm jealous because people love Dylan? She was emotional. Did you disagree? He looked down. I think you and Dylan are very different. That wasn't my question. I'm not doing this tonight. He walked away. I ended up paying $4,000 directly to the lighting company after Dylan negotiated the rest down. I told myself I had held the boundary because I did not pay 12. Manipulated people often celebrate the discount. 2 months after the wedding, my parents announced their 40th anniversary trip. 5 weeks through Italy and France. Rome, Florence, Venice, Nice, Provence, Paris. My mother had been planning it secretly for nearly a year, using reward points, retirement money, and discounts from one of Dylan's travel industry contacts. I was genuinely happy for them, until Patricia sent the flight details. Basic economy with a long connection. Dad had circulation issues and chronic back pain. This looks rough, I said. We know. Can you change the dates? Everything is booked. Then shorten the itinerary. Silence. Your father has spent 40 years working, she said. I know. We never had a honeymoon like other people. Okay. Business class upgrades are available. There it was. How much? You always make beautiful moments sound like invoices. How much? $11,000 total after points. No. Your father physically cannot sit in economy for that long. Then the trip plan is unsafe. He can if we upgrade. I'm not paying $11,000. Dad entered the room. What's going on? My mother put the phone on speaker. Alex thinks our anniversary trip is irresponsible. That is not what I said. She won't help with the flights. My father sighed. Kiddo, I hate asking. He always called me kiddo immediately before a request. Then don't. I just thought after everything, your mom and I gave up raising you kids. How much are you asking me to contribute? Maybe half. I eventually paid $3,500 toward upgraded seats on the longest segments. Again, manipulated people celebrate the reduced surrender. My mother posted the new itinerary with the caption, 40 years of choosing family, finally choosing ourselves. She tagged Dylan and Camille because they had helped plan restaurant reservations. She did not tag me. The phone call happened the Thursday before their flight. I was at work, leaving a meeting about opening a new therapy location. I called Dad because his cardiologist's office had contacted me about a blood pressure follow-up. I remained listed as the emergency contact for both parents because they said online portals confused them. Patricia answered his phone. He's outside checking the luggage weight. His appointment is tomorrow at 9:30. I wrote it somewhere. Please make sure he goes. Long travel plus his medication change. Alex, I know. The nurse called me. Because you inserted yourself into everything. I stopped. You asked me to remain the medical contact. I'm tired. Sorry. Let me find the calendar. She placed the phone on the kitchen counter without disconnecting. I heard cabinets opening. Then Dad came inside. Who was that? Alex. What does she want? Your appointment. Oh. Papers moved. My mother said. She already texted me twice. At least she remembers things. Of course she does. Being useful is basically her personality. My father chuckled. Careful. She can't hear me. I was 10 feet from the elevator in my office building, holding my phone. My mother continued. Honestly, it works in our favor. Alex confuses being needed with being loved. My father said, That's harsh. Hope moved inside me. Then he added, But true. I stopped breathing. Patricia laughed. She has no husband, no kids, and her friends all have their own lives. We are the thing that makes her feel necessary. Dad said, She's been pulling back since Dylan's wedding. She'll get over it. She always does. What if she stops paying? She won't. She cares too much about being the good daughter. I opened the voice recording application on my work laptop with one hand and placed my phone beside it. Not because I had planned revenge, because some part of me already understood that they would deny the conversation later. My father said, I've been meaning to talk to her about the deed after we get back. Patricia replied. Don't ask. Tell her it makes sense for estate planning. She'll push back. Then remind her, we gave up our house to move here. They had sold their Houston house voluntarily and used most of the proceeds on travel, debt, and investments. I already counted on this place, Dad said. The personal loan assumes I'll have access to equity eventually. My stomach went cold. How much did you borrow? My mother asked. Enough. Mark. Don't start. Once our names are added, I refinance properly. And Alex? Alex keeps living here if she wants. We're not monsters. My mother laughed. She was never built for family anyway. She was always a little burden, too serious, too sensitive, always making us feel like we owed her something. She pays most of the house. Exactly. Let her feel useful. Then my father said the sentence I have never forgotten. If she gets difficult, use Dylan. She can't stand being the bad sister. I remained still until my mother returned to the phone. Alex? I found the calendar. My voice sounded like someone else's. Good. Anything else? No. Your dad will go. Have a good trip. We will. Send me your Paris restaurant list again. Sure. I ended the call. I stood in the hallway for several minutes staring at the carpet pattern. I did not cry. I did not become numb exactly. I felt as if hundreds of unrelated memories had suddenly rearranged themselves into one picture. The forgotten birthdays, the wedding photograph, the surgery, the bills, Dad's silence, Mom's guilt, Dylan's emergencies. Every time I had interpreted need as closeness, they had noticed the same weakness and built a system around it. That night, I sat at Grandma Eleanor's kitchen table with my laptop and made 4 headings: property, money, work, family. Under property, I wrote house mine. Under money, I listed every recurring payment connected to my parents. Under work, I wrote emergency contact, personal data, bank access, passwords. Under family, I wrote one sentence: stop explaining. I did not immediately decide to sell the house. That decision came after I walked through each room and realized how little of the home still felt like Eleanor or me. My mother's beige sofa occupied the living room. Dad's recliner faced the television like a throne. The courtyard had decorative lanterns Patricia selected because Grandma's clay pots looked old. My books had moved into the smallest bedroom because Mom preferred the built-in shelves for family photographs. In nearly 4 years, my parents had converted ownership into emotional displacement without changing a single document. If I asked them to leave and kept the house, every room would become a reminder. If I gave them the house, I would complete the plan they had already built around my weakness. Selling became the only choice that felt like mine. The next morning, I called Dana Price, a property attorney our hospital network had used for an unrelated facility issue. I gave facts. Grandmother's house. Deed solely in my name. Parents living there, with permission. No rent, no ownership contribution. They were leaving the country for 5 weeks. I wanted to end occupancy, secure belongings, and sell without creating unnecessary harm. Dana said, "Do you want to sell because you are angry, or because you no longer want the property?" I thought about the courtyard. Both. Would you want to keep it if they apologized? No. That answer surprised me. Then separate the emotion from the transaction. She explained the steps simply. Written notice, inventory, storage, no destruction, no interference with medication or identification, clear communication. That was enough. I did not want a courtroom story. I wanted an ending with no door left open for guilt to walk through. I contacted a realtor named Marcus Bell, who specialized in discreet residential sales for physicians and executives. The house was worth far more than when Grandma purchased it. Alamo Heights prices had climbed. Marcus estimated around $1.08 million depending on timing and condition. How fast? I asked. 3 to 6 weeks if you price it honestly. Quietly? Private network first. Do it. While my parents packed for Rome, I smiled when required. Patricia asked whether her red scarf looked better with a cream coat. Dad asked me to print medication lists. I did. I was not interested in sabotaging their health or trip. A boundary does not become stronger because you add cruelty. Dylan called asking whether I could help pay for an overdue state tax bill from his business. No. Silence. Are you okay? Yes. You sound weird. I'm working. Can Mom talk to you? She thinks. No. Alex. No, Dylan. He laughed nervously. Okay. Wow. It was the first clean no I had given him in years. My parents left Saturday morning. At the airport, my mother posted a photograph with Dad holding 2 glasses of sparkling wine. 40 years together, 2 kids raised, a lifetime of sacrifice. Now the adventure is ours, Dylan commented. My heroes. Camille added hearts. I looked at the photograph and signed the property listing agreement. The next 4 weeks were almost peaceful. My parents sent photographs from Rome, Florence, Venice, and Nice. Patricia asked me to pay the home alarm renewal because she could not access the account abroad. I replied, "You'll need to update the payment method when you return." She sent 3 question marks. Dad texted, "Everything okay?" Yes. I removed my card from their supplemental insurance and sent instructions for adding theirs. I stopped paying the family phone plan and separated my number. I removed myself as Cody Dillon. No, Dylan's emergency guarantor on a vendor account. I froze old shared credit lines. I changed passwords, security questions, and beneficiary information. I removed my parents from any account where they had view-only access. I updated my emergency contact at work from Patricia to my friend Nina Patel, a clinic administrator who had once driven across town after my car battery died because she knew I was exhausted. The form took 3 minutes. I stared at the screen afterward. For years, Patricia had been listed as the person to call if my life broke. When I had shoulder surgery, she had attended a wine club luncheon instead. Administrative systems sometimes preserve fantasies long after relationships stop supporting them. The house received 2 private offers. I accepted one from a pediatric surgeon and her husband relocating from Denver. They loved the courtyard and wanted a fast closing before school began. I accepted slightly less than the highest theoretical value because certainty mattered more than maximizing every dollar. My parents received formal notice by email and certified mail. Patricia opened the email from a hotel in Florence and replied, "Please handle any house paperwork until we get back. We're having trouble with international calls." I saved the response. Their belongings were carefully inventoried. Personal furniture, clothes, family photographs, medical files, jewelry, electronics, and keepsakes went into a climate-controlled storage unit with 90 days prepaid. My grandmother's belongings specifically left to me traveled with my own things. I donated much of my furniture, rather than carry the old arrangement into my new life. I rented a 2-bedroom condo near the Pearl District in San Antonio because I did not want to leave my career or friends. The condo was smaller than Eleanor's house but bright, quiet, and mine in a way the inherited home had stopped feeling. I bought 1 sofa, 1 bed, a kitchen table, and nothing selected for family approval. Closing occurred 3 days before my parents returned. I signed the documents in a conference room overlooking downtown. Marcus asked whether I wanted a moment before the final signature. No. Then I signed. The house stopped being mine at 10:46 on a Tuesday morning. I expected grief. Relief arrived first. Then grief, because relief had arrived first. I drove to the empty house one final time after the buyers completed their walkthrough. In the courtyard, Grandma's rosemary had overgrown one corner. I cut a small bundle and placed it in paper towels. Inside the kitchen, I stood where my phone had captured my parents' conversation. I had considered leaving a dramatic note, something sharp about burdens, something clever enough for a thumbnail. In the end, I wrote one sentence. You were right about one thing I needed to stop confusing being useful with being loved. I placed the note on the kitchen island beside a folder containing storage information, hotel confirmation, and contact details for the management company handling their transition. I left 4 prepaid hotel nights because their return flight landed late, and I did not want 2 older adults stranded without a safe place. Then I locked the door and handed the keys to Marcus. When I arrived at my condo, I unpacked Grandma's recipe box, the rosemary, 3 photographs, and the birthday card she had given me when I turned 28. I had forgotten the message inside. Alex, being generous is one of your best qualities. Just remember, generosity needs a door, or eventually, everyone walks through your house without knocking. I sat on the floor and cried harder than I had since her funeral. My parents landed Sunday evening. The first call came at 7:18. Alex, the front key isn't working. I let it ring. The second came 2 minutes later. Call us. Something is wrong with the house. Dad called next. Kiddo, your mom is getting upset. Give me a call. Kiddo again. Softness before demand. Then silence for 9 minutes. Patricia called. What did you do? I answered. Read the folder. There is a folder inside the house. We cannot get inside. The agent should have left 1 copy in the lockbox area. Agent? The house was sold. She laughed. Stop. It closed Tuesday. My father's voice exploded in the background. Give me the phone. Alex, what the hell are you talking about? The property sold. Your belongings are stored safely. 90 days are prepaid. You have 4 hotel nights beginning tonight. You sold our house. Grandma left the house to me. We live there. You did. We gave up our home to move in with you. You sold your Houston house voluntarily. Because you said we could stay. For a few months. 4 years is not temporary. It became 4 years because I kept agreeing. This is insane. Reverse it. I can't. Then buy it back. The entitlement was so pure I almost admired the consistency. No. Patricia began crying. Where are we supposed to live? You have pensions, savings, and 4 prepaid hotel nights. The storage company has your belongings. After a 5-week trip, you expect us to apartment hunt? Yes. You did this while we were overseas because you were too cowardly to face us. I did it while you were overseas because you planned to pressure me into adding your names to the property. Silence. Who told you that? Dad asked. You did. What? The phone call before your trip never disconnected. My mother stopped crying. Alex. I heard everything. You listened to a private conversation? There was no apology, no shock at what I had heard. Offense that I had heard it. I heard Mom say I confused being needed with being loved. I heard you say I was too afraid to lose the family to stop paying. I heard you discuss adding yourselves to Grandma's house. I heard you say you had borrowed money, expecting access to the equity. My father's breathing changed. You don't understand financial planning. Then explain it. Not over the phone. You explained enough when you believed I wasn't listening, Patricia said. Families vent. You weren't angry. You were laughing. You have spent your whole life interpreting everything negatively. What positive interpretation belongs to, she was always a little burden. I did not say burden. I recorded the last 3 minutes. Silence again. You recorded us? My father said. I preserved what I heard. That is disgusting. And there it was. Caught people often describe evidence as betrayal because apology would require surrendering control. Your hotel information is in your email, I said. Do not go to my office. Do not contact my employees. Do not appear at my condo. You do not have the address. Alexandra, if you hang up, good night. I ended the call. My hands shook for almost an hour. Nina sat beside me on the floor, eating takeout noodles from the coffee table. Do you want to call back? She asked. No. Do you want them sleeping safely tonight? Yes. They have a hotel. Yes. Then let their feelings belong to them. My parents called 36 times before midnight. By morning, Patricia's messages had moved through every stage I knew. Confusion. There must be another solution. Injury. I cannot believe my own daughter did this. Anger. You had no right to humiliate us publicly. Threat. Your father is talking to attorneys. Guilt. His blood pressure is dangerously high. Bargaining. At least cover a rental house while we adjust. Not one message said, "We are sorry we used your loneliness against you." My father's email was longer. He said the conversation had been hypothetical. He said adding them to the house would have simplified estate matters. He said the personal loan was manageable. He said parents naturally discuss children privately. Then, in the final paragraph, he asked whether I could transfer $12,000 to cover a security deposit, moving costs, and 6 months of rent while they restructured. I read that paragraph twice. He had spent 7 paragraphs denying that money shaped our relationship and finished by requesting money. I forwarded the email to a folder labeled "Remember," not because I wanted lifelong anger. Because loneliness has a way of editing history in favor of reunion. I needed evidence for the future version of myself who might remember Christmas mornings and forget invoices. Dylan called that afternoon. "You sold the house?" "Yes. Mom is losing her mind. That sounds like something you should help with." "Why me?" The question escaped instantly. I almost laughed. "Because you're her son. I have a business and a new marriage. I have a career. You're better with this stuff. Competence is not a custody agreement." They're old. Dad is 69. Mom is 67. They walk 12 miles a day through Italy, according to her posts. "You know what I mean." "Yes, you mean they are my problem, because they have always been my problem. They raised us. Both of us. This is about the wedding, isn't it?" "The wedding was informative." "You're still angry about the photo?" "I am angry that I paid vendors for an event where the photographer was told I wasn't core family. Camille's coordinator did that." "Did you object?" "It was chaotic." "Did you notice I wasn't at brunch?" Silence. "You left early." "I learned brunch had been moved after I saw photos from the airport." "Mom said you wanted space." "Of course she did. So now what? You just cut everyone off?" "For now, yes." "You are unbelievable. I heard Mom tell Dad you were the person to use if I resisted, because I couldn't stand being the bad sister." Silence. "She said that?" Dad agreed. "I didn't know. Now you do." "What are you expecting me to do?" "Nothing. That's the point." I ended the call. My parents moved into a furnished apartment near Leon Valley after 4 hotel nights. It was not a dangerous place. It had 2 bedrooms, a small balcony, covered parking, and no courtyard worth photographing. They could afford it using retirement income, if they reduced travel and stopped treating pensions as spending money. My mother told relatives they had been forced into temporary housing. The phrase made it sound as though a storm destroyed their home rather than an owner ending 4 years of free occupancy. The family group chat exploded. Aunt Rebecca wrote that abandoning older parents violated everything Grandma Eleanor believed in. Cousin Jonah said no disagreement justified taking someone's home. Dylan wrote, "This has gone too far." I waited until 16 messages accumulated. Then I uploaded a simple summary. Property purchased by Eleanor Reynolds in 1991. Property inherited solely by Alexandra Mercer. Taxes, insurance, major repairs, utilities, and household costs paid primarily by Alexandra. No rent received from Patricia or Mark. Written occupancy notice delivered before travel. Personal belongings stored for 90 days. 4 hotel nights provided. Sale completed legally, before return. I added, "My parents are not homeless. They have retirement income and safe housing. I will not discuss private conversations in this group." Silence lasted 19 minutes. Then Aunt Rebecca asked, "Patricia, is the deed really only Alex's?" My mother left the group chat. My father wrote privately, "Posting finances made your mother look like a liar." I posted ownership. Same effect. That should tell you something. Patricia went public 2 weeks later. She posted a photograph of our family from when I was 12. Dylan stood between my parents smiling. I stood beside Dad holding a science fair ribbon. Caption: "You can spend a lifetime sacrificing for your children and still discover one day that success has taught them to measure family in dollars." Comments comforted her. Praying for healing. Children forget. A mother's love is forever. Then one of my grandmother's former neighbors commented, "Wasn't that house Eleanor's, and didn't she leave it directly to Alex?" The comment disappeared. Another person asked whether Patricia and Mark had paid rent. The entire post vanished by dinner. She replaced it with quotes about forgiveness, toxic children, and gratitude. Social media had always been my mother's preferred courtroom because she could choose the evidence. For the first time, witnesses entered the comments. My father did speak with attorneys. Two looked at the property history and declined to pursue anything. One sent Dana a letter using phrases like implied ownership and family reliance. Dana responded with the deed, estate documents, occupancy notice, payment records, and Patricia's email saying, "Handle any house paperwork until we get back." No second letter came. The larger problem was Dad's debt. I learned the truth through Dylan, not because he wanted to protect me, but because Patricia had begun calling him for money. Mark had taken out a $74,000 personal loan, refinanced his SUV, and accumulated nearly $31,000 in credit card balances during the previous 18 months. He had invested part of it in a speculative retirement community development outside New Braunfels and used the rest for travel, lifestyle spending, and wedding contributions. He thought once you added them to the house, he could refinance everything against the property, Dylan said. That's what I heard. Why didn't you warn me? I didn't know the plan involved putting their names on the house. I knew Dad called the house future family equity. Did that not sound strange? Everything in this family sounds strange if you stop long enough to examine it. That was the first mature sentence I had heard from my brother in months. Mom wants me to cover part of the rent, he continued. Are you? No. Why? I can't. Difference. What? You said you can't. For years, everyone treated my ability as obligation. He sighed. I know. Do you? I'm starting to. My parents' financial life became smaller quickly. Dad sold the SUV. They canceled a winter cruise. Patricia started part-time work at a home furnishings store, though she told friends she was helping a friend's boutique during the holidays. Dad accepted contract sales work for a commercial flooring company. They survived. That fact angered me at first. Not because I wanted them to fail, because I had spent years believing catastrophe would follow any refusal. Without my payments, they did not collapse. They adjusted. Their helplessness had always contained more flexibility than they admitted. The same happened with Dylan. After I stopped funding emergencies, he negotiated payment plans, reduced expenses, lost one employee, and took on corporate event work he had previously considered beneath his creative vision. Somehow, his life continued. Manipulation had convinced me every no created disaster. Reality showed that many emergencies were simply consequences reaching the correct address. The first Thanksgiving after the sale arrived 4 months later. I planned to spend it with Nina and her family. Then Aunt Rebecca called. Your parents want one conversation. No. They have written a proposal. Definitely no. Alex, I'm calling because I read it and I think you should know what they plan to tell everyone if you don't come. What? That selling the house was a trauma response caused by jealousy over Dylan's wedding, that they always intended to repay you, and that your job in healthcare operations has made you controlling. I laughed once. Creative. They want the family to sign something supporting reconciliation. Of course. You don't have to attend. I will not let them pretend you agreed. But if you want to speak for yourself, the invitation stands. I asked Nina what she thought. Do you want contact with them? No. Then why go? Because I am tired of them using every silent room as proof. That sounds like a reason. Is it worth the emotional cost? Once. Then I'll drive. Thanksgiving took place at Rebecca's home in Bourne. 27 relatives attended. Patricia and Mark arrived early. Dylan and Camille came from Austin. My parents had arranged name cards before I arrived. My card sat near the kitchen entrance. Dylan and Camille sat beside Patricia. Mark sat at the head of one table, as though moving into an apartment had not altered his sense of ceremonial rank. Nina's name was nowhere. Friends are sitting in the breakfast room, Patricia said when she saw her. Nina sits with me. This is a family conversation. Nina drove me home after surgery when no family member came. Several relatives looked toward my parents. Patricia smiled thinly. There's no need to turn every memory into an accusation. Aunt Rebecca added a chair beside mine. She sits here. Dinner began awkwardly. Mark prayed for humility, forgiveness, and the wisdom to understand that family must survive temporary anger. Patricia dabbed her eyes. Dylan stared at his plate. Camille squeezed his hand. Nobody mentioned Grandma. Halfway through dinner, my mother spoke about how difficult downsizing had been. At our age, starting over is frightening. My cousin asked whether they liked the apartment. We're making the best of it, Patricia said. It's certainly different from what we worked our lives to build. I looked up. You didn't build Grandma's house. Silence. Patricia smiled. I meant our life. Then say life, Mark whispered. Alex, please. Precision matters when property is why we're here, Dylan muttered. Can we eat? We did. After dessert, Dad stood with a folder. We need to stop tearing this family apart. He distributed copies, titled Mercer Family Restoration Agreement. The document said Patricia and Mark acknowledged hurtful language, spoken privately during a period of financial stress. It said I acknowledged making an abrupt property decision while emotionally distressed following Dylan's wedding. It proposed that I provide 12 months of transitional housing assistance, reimburse my parents for furniture and improvements made to Grandma's house, resume supplemental medical payments, and contribute to Dad's debt restructuring because family expectations influenced previous borrowing. In exchange, my parents would stop discussing the conflict online and fully restore Alexandra to family holidays without conditions. Restore me. The people who had used my loneliness as leverage were offering family access in exchange for money. The final page contained a social media statement already written for me. After a painful misunderstanding, I recognized that selling the family home while my parents were abroad caused unnecessary hurt. My parents made mistakes, and so did I. I allowed old sibling tension and professional stress to influence a decision that should have been handled privately. We are moving forward with compassion. My name waited at the bottom. No, I said. Dad remained standing. You haven't read the entire document. I read enough. This is a compromise. What do I receive? Your family. A few relatives looked down. So access to my family costs 12 months of rent, medical premiums, and part of your debt. Patricia said, do not reduce healing to money. The proposal has dollar amounts. Because practical damage occurred. Your practical damage is that free support ended. Mark placed both hands on the table. I borrowed because I believed this house would remain in the family. It did not belong to the family. Your grandmother intended security. For me, she would never have wanted us struggling. Grandma left Mom nearly $300,000. Patricia stiffened. Which is gone because life happened. Life or spending? You sound like a banker. I run medical operations. Exactly. Everything becomes spreadsheets and accountability. That sounds terrible until someone else is paying. Dylan closed his eyes. Patricia said. This is why I said what I said. The table became still. Good, I replied. Then say it again. Her face changed. What? You want me to sign a statement calling this a misunderstanding? Tell everyone exactly what I misunderstood. We do not need to perform cruelty for an audience. You invited the audience. Mark said. Alex, did Mom say I confused being needed with being loved? He looked at his plate. Answer. Yes. Patricia's face flushed. Did she say I would keep paying because I was afraid to lose the family? Yes. Did you agree? He closed his eyes. Yes. Did you say you planned to put your name on Grandma's house after returning from Europe? We planned to discuss it. Did you borrow money based on expecting access to the property? Yes. Relatives began shifting. Patricia said, Mark, stop letting her interrogate you. I looked toward her. Did you say I was a burden? I said you had always been difficult. That is not the same sentence. Fine, her voice rose. I said you had always been a burden emotionally. You were never easy. You questioned everything. You held grudges. You made helping you exhausting because you kept reminding us of details. What help, raising you? You mean parenting. There, that disrespect. Did you say you mostly called because something was due? She hesitated. I said you liked being useful. Did you believe I would keep paying because I had no husband or children? Nina's hand became still beside mine. My mother looked around the room. I was frustrated. Yes or no? Yes. I reached into my bag and placed my laptop on the table. I recorded the last 3 minutes after I realized what I was hearing. Patricia's face went white. Dad whispered, "Don't. You accused me for 4 months of misunderstanding. If you want the misunderstanding corrected, let's listen." I pressed play. My mother's voice filled Aunt Rebecca's dining room. "She'll get over it. She always does. Dad. What if she stops paying? Patricia. She won't. She cares too much about being the good daughter." Then the discussion of adding themselves to the deed. Dad's loan. My mother calling me a burden. Dad saying, "If she gets difficult, use Dylan. She can't stand being the bad sister." The recording ended. Nobody spoke. Camille looked at Dylan. He stared at his father. Aunt Rebecca covered her mouth. Patricia whispered, "Recording private people without their knowledge is disgusting." Camille said softly, "Patricia, that is what you're responding to?" My mother turned. "You are not part of this. I married into this family." "Exactly. You don't understand the history," Dylan finally spoke. "I didn't know you were telling Dad to use me against her." "I didn't mean use literally. What does it mean figuratively?" "You know your sister reacts strongly when she thinks you need support." "Because you told her I needed support." His voice changed. "How much wedding money came from Alex?" "That is not relevant." "How much?" Patricia looked at me as if I had engineered the question. "She paid a few vendors." "How much?" "About 7 or 8,000. 9,400, I said. Dylan turned toward me. "Why didn't you tell me? You knew about 4,000. "Not the rest. Mom routed expenses through household emergencies. I only figured out later that my support freed up their money for deposits." Camille looked sick. "The rehearsal dinner?" Patricia said. "We chose to help our son." "Using money you could spend because Alex covered your life," Camille replied. "That is not the same as taking her money," I said. "No, it is subtler." My father sat down heavily. "We made mistakes." "Which ones?" I asked. "Alex, must everything become a confession? You wrote a confession for me." He looked at the unsigned page. "I should never have assumed the house would become ours." "Good." "I should not have borrowed against that expectation." "Good." "I should have defended you when your mother said those things." Patricia stared at him. "Mark," he continued, "and I should have told you years ago that we were becoming dependent on your money." My throat tightened. "Why didn't you?" "Because I liked the life. Honesty is sometimes less comforting than a lie, and more useful." "Did you love me?" "Yes." "Did you love the house more?" He began crying. "Sometimes I protected the house more." The room became very quiet. Patricia stood. "This is ridiculous. We are sitting here allowing her to destroy her father because she needs everyone to know she was right." Aunt Rebecca said, "Sit down, Patricia." My mother froze. Rebecca had spent decades softening every disagreement with her older sister. "No," Patricia said, "I will not sit here while my daughter humiliates us. You brought a document asking her to admit she imagined what you said. I am trying to preserve the family." "You are trying to preserve support," Rebecca replied. Patricia turned toward me. "Is this what you wanted? Everyone against me?" "No. You have always wanted Dylan to see us as villains. I wanted Dylan to become responsible for his own life." "I am," Dylan said. Patricia ignored him. "You could have come to us privately. You were discussing how to pressure me privately." "We were afraid." "Of what?" "Losing security. Then you understand why I sold the house." She stopped. For 1 second, I thought the symmetry might reach her. Then she said, "You had other options. So did you." Dylan pushed the reconciliation document away. "I'm not signing this." Patricia stared at him. "No one asked you to. My name is in it. It says sibling conflict contributed to Alex's instability." He looked at me. "You weren't unstable." "It was not an apology." It was the first time he chose accuracy, when accuracy made our mother angry. Thank you, I said. Camille touched his arm. Did you know they expected Alex to pay their expenses indefinitely? I knew more than I wanted to admit. Why? Because if she paid Mom and Dad paid me. He looked at me. Not directly every time. But yes. Your money kept the whole system moving, Patricia whispered. Dylan. It's true. After everything we have done for you? That sentence is the problem. He laughed without humor. You use sacrifice like a receipt. My mother began crying. My own children are attacking me. Nobody rushed to comfort her. The absence of immediate rescue looked almost cruel because our family had spent decades treating her distress as the emergency that ended every conversation. I felt my old reflex activate. Fix it. Soften. Say something kind. I let the reflex pass. Here is what happens now, I said. There will be no housing stipend, no medical premium payments, no debt contribution, no apology post, no access to my accounts. Mom, there will be no contact for the foreseeable future. Dad, you may write once, if you can do it without asking me to comfort you. Dylan, I need at least 6 months without contact. Camille may communicate with me separately if she chooses. No one carries messages between us. Patricia stopped crying. You are cutting off your mother. Yes. Over words, over a system the words revealed. I gave you life. And I am allowed to live it. What happens when I get sick? The question came quickly, prepared. Call Dylan. Dylan's head snapped toward me. Why me? Silence hit the table. His face changed as he heard himself. I looked at him. That is what I have been trying to explain. He covered his mouth with one hand. Patricia said, he has a business. I have 6 medical clinics. You're better at these things. Ability does not create ownership, Mark whispered. Alex, could we at least start again at Christmas? No. Next year? I don't know. You may regret waiting. That is mine to risk. Patricia pushed the agreement toward me. Sign the part saying the conflict is private. Think about our reputation. I almost laughed. Your reputation is not my final bill. I tore only the page containing my signature line and placed the 2 pieces beside my plate. I am not signing a lie so the people who used me can feel misunderstood instead of accountable. I stood. Nina stood beside me. Aunt Rebecca asked, will you stay for coffee? Not tonight. She nodded. Patricia said, if you walk out now, don't expect this family to still be here when you decide you're lonely. I put on my coat. That threat worked better when I thought being alone was worse than being used. We left. In Nina's car, my hands began shaking before she started the engine. Do you feel good? She asked. No. Do you regret it? No. That's probably healthier than feeling triumphant. We stopped at a gas station 20 minutes later and bought terrible coffee and powdered donuts because neither of us wanted more turkey. I laughed for the first time that day. The next year taught me that cutting off a family system does not produce instant peace. It produces withdrawal. I woke many mornings wanting to check whether my parents were okay. I wondered whether Dad remembered medication, whether Patricia knew how to update insurance, whether Dylan had paid his quarterly taxes. My body still believed awareness created responsibility. Therapy helped separate those things. My therapist, Dr. Elena Morris, asked me one afternoon, if your mother forgets a bill, what happens? She pays late. Does she die? No. If your father needs help with a form, he can call the insurance company. Does he know how to use a phone? Yes. If Dylan underestimates taxes, he pays penalties. Does the universe collapse? No. Then what exactly have you been preventing? Consequences. And what did they learn while you prevented them? That someone else would carry the cost. My parents adapted. Dad negotiated a debt repayment plan. He sold several investments at a loss and traded his newer SUV for a used sedan. Patricia continued part-time work at a boutique home store and eventually admitted to relatives that it was employment, not helping a friend. They moved from the furnished apartment into a modest two-bedroom rental north of San Antonio, where the monthly cost fit their actual income. The place was clean, safe, and ordinary. No red tile roof. No courtyard. No Alamo Heights address. Patricia referred to it as temporary. For almost 2 years. The world kept moving anyway. Dylan changed more noticeably once everyone stopped protecting him from discomfort. Camille separated their business finances. She told him she would not allow her family's winery to become another safety net. Dylan took a salaried events position with a hotel, while maintaining smaller, independent projects on weekends. He hated having a manager at first. Then he learned the advantage of predictable income. He repaid several vendors. He hired an accountant. His marriage survived, though Camille later told me they came closer to divorce during the first year than anyone knew. I married his charm and discovered how much invisible infrastructure your family provided beneath it, she said. When the infrastructure disappeared, we finally met each other honestly. She apologized for the engagement photograph. I wanted beautiful pictures without tension. Your absence made the photograph easier, and I accepted that because I did not understand what it meant. Then I accepted your help anyway. I'm sorry. I believed her. We did not become close. Apology does not require intimacy as reward. My father's letter arrived 4 months after Thanksgiving. It began without excuses. I knew your mother's description of you was unfair. I also knew correcting her might make you less willing to support us. I told myself I was preventing conflict, but I was protecting comfort. He wrote about the loan. He had convinced himself the house would become shared family property because I was unmarried and had no children. I treated your future as unfinished space the rest of us could use. He admitted resenting the fact that Eleanor left the house to me. Your grandmother trusted you in ways she did not trust Patricia or me. Instead of asking why, I decided it was favoritism. Then, the hardest paragraph. I loved you. I also became willing to let you question whether you were loved because uncertainty made you easier to rely on. I am ashamed. No request for money. No demand for forgiveness. If you never speak to me again, I understand. I cried while reading. Not because the letter repaired anything. Because my father had finally described the wound without making me defend its existence. I replied 2 months later. I believe you understand more than before. I am not ready to meet. You may write again in 6 months. He respected the boundary. 6 months later, another letter arrived about ordinary life. His work, his health. A book he was reading. No guilt. No updates about Patricia, unless relevant to his own living situation. I allowed email eventually. Then one phone call every 2 months. Our relationship became smaller than before, and more honest than it had ever been. He never again called me kiddo before asking for something because he stopped asking. Patricia moved in the opposite direction before changing it all. Birthday flowers arrived at my office. I returned them. She mailed photographs of me as a child with notes like, "You were loved before money changed you." She emailed through new addresses after I blocked old ones. "One day I will die. Your father is heartbroken. People are asking why you refuse to forgive. A daughter should not erase her mother." I saved nothing except messages containing threats or requests. The rest disappeared. For 2 years, every attempted apology ended with a demand. "I am sorry you hurt us, but you should understand what pressure we were under. I am sorry I called you a burden, but you have always been judgmental. I am sorry for the house situation, but selling it while we traveled was cruel." Sorry followed by but is often a bridge back to the original accusation. I declined the bridge. Dylan contacted me exactly 6 months after Thanksgiving. One email. "You told Mom to call me when she got sick," and my first thought was, why should that become my problem? I have thought about that moment almost every day. It showed me how much of my adulthood was built on the assumption that you would handle whatever none of us wanted. He admitted he knew my mother sometimes created emergencies to make me transfer money. I did not ask questions because the system benefited me. He apologized for the wedding photograph. "I saw you standing outside the group. Camille asked whether we should add you, And I said we could get another shot later because I wanted to keep Mom happy and the light was changing. We never got the other shot. I knew you were hurt. I let Mom tell me you were jealous because that explanation required nothing from me. He did not ask for money or a meeting. I replied, "Thank you for being specific. I'm not ready." Understood. A year later, we met at a coffee shop in Austin. Dylan looked nervous in a way I had rarely seen. "I brought my own debit card," he said immediately. I laughed despite myself. "Excellent start. Bad joke? Good enough." We spoke for 90 minutes. He did not ask whether I forgave him until the end. "Do you? Some parts? Which parts? I no longer want you punished. And the rest? I don't trust you with access. Money? Money, emergencies, guilt, Mom." He nodded. "Fair. Do not call boundaries fair because agreement makes you look mature." "Right. Sorry." We created a small relationship. Coffee a few times a year. Birthday texts. No loans. No business review. No family pressure. When his company later struggled with a vendor dispute, he mentioned it without asking me to fix it. I waited. He said, "I'm telling you because it's my life, not because it's your job." That sentence meant more than an apology. He had begun learning the difference between connection and extraction. 3 years after the sale, my father and I met in person. He chose a public cafe because he said he did not want me to feel cornered. He looked older but healthier than during the conflict. "Can I hug you?" he asked. "Not yet." "Okay." We sat. "Your mother says I betrayed her by admitting what we did. How do you feel?" "I think I betrayed you by not admitting it sooner." He told me he had stopped describing the house as something taken from him. When friends asked, he said, "My daughter owned it. We lived there because she allowed us." We treated permission like inheritance and lost the relationship. "Do people judge you?" I asked. "Some." "How does that feel? Appropriate. Do you want me to forgive Mom?" "I want the family easier." "That is different." I appreciated the honesty. "Do not ask me to make it easier." "I won't." We began meeting twice a year. He was not invited to my home for another 18 months. When I eventually invited him for lunch, he arrived with nothing except bakery cookies. No paperwork, no subtle medical forms, no bag suggesting an overnight stay. Before leaving, he asked, "Should I wash the dishes?" Yes, ordinary relationships are built partly from ordinary requests people can refuse. Patricia's genuine apology arrived nearly 5 years after the phone call. She mailed it through Aunt Rebecca, after Rebecca asked permission. "I hated that my own mother left you the house because I felt she had chosen you over me. I moved into it telling myself I deserved part of what Eleanor had withheld. Every repair you paid for made me feel smaller, so instead of becoming grateful, I described you as controlling. Dylan's dependence made me feel necessary. Your competence made me feel judged. I rewarded the child who needed me and punished the child who did not." I paused there for a long time. She continued, "When I said you confused being needed with being loved, I knew it was true because I had helped create that confusion. I knew if we called mainly when bills appeared, you would keep answering because you feared silence more than cost. I used that fear. I am sorry." She admitted deleting my engagement, dinner comment, because relatives might notice I had been excluded. She admitted defending the photograph because admitting the exclusion would make Dylan look selfish. She admitted the Europe trip pressure. She admitted telling Mark to use Dylan against me. I believed motherhood gave me permanent access. When you sold the house, I experienced the end of access as theft because I had stopped understanding the difference. No, but no request until the end. I would like to speak once if you ever choose. I understand my apology does not purchase that. I read the letter 3 times. I cried for the woman who wrote it, and for the girl who needed her to write it 20 years earlier. I still did not meet her. I sent one message through Rebecca. "I believe the apology is real. I am not ready for contact. Please continue whatever work helped you write it without making reconciliation the goal." Patricia replied, "I will." Then she stopped contacting me. That silence felt different from punishment. It felt respectful. People sometimes hear that part and say, If she truly changed, why not forgive her? I did forgive parts of her. Forgiveness and access are not synonyms. I stopped wishing she would lose friends. I stopped checking whether her apartment was smaller than Grandma's house. I stopped wanting relatives to confront her. Her life no longer needed to become worse for mine to feel justified. That was forgiveness enough for me. Contact remained a separate question. My own life expanded after the family system shrank. I remained in San Antonio and eventually became Chief Operating Officer for the Rehabilitation Network. The promotion required travel and longer strategic planning, responsibilities I might previously have declined because I believed every empty evening needed to remain available for family emergencies. Without that permanent anticipation, I discovered how much mental space I had been donating. I slept better. My migraines decreased. My savings grew. My friends stopped asking whether I needed to leave dinner early because Mom had called. I began taking pottery classes on Saturday mornings because Grandma used to joke that every financially responsible person needed one hobby that produced useless objects. My first bowl looked like an injured ashtray. I kept it. Nina remained my closest friend. She never became a replacement sister or mother. Chosen family does not need to imitate biological titles to become meaningful. When Nina married a physical therapist named Jordan, the photographer called for family photographs. Nina looked across the room and said, "Alex, get over here." "Family photo?" I asked. "Yes." Nobody explained why I qualified. Nobody calculated what I had done for her. I simply belonged because she wanted me beside her. When the photograph arrived, I cried in my kitchen. I had spent decades trying to purchase with reliability what healthy people sometimes give through affection. Eventually, I began dating a man named Daniel Cho, an architect who specialized in school and clinic design. We met during an expansion project. On our fourth date, he asked about my family because I had mentioned my grandmother more often than my parents. I told him the short version. "Do you want to reconcile?" he asked. I braced for advice. "I don't know." "Then you don't have to decide for anyone else's comfort." That answer mattered. We married 3 years later in a small ceremony in the Texas Hill Country. 80 guests. No fireworks. No brand partnership. No family financing. My father attended after asking whether his presence would create pressure. Dylan and Camille attended. Patricia did not. She sent a handwritten card through Rebecca after confirming I wanted to receive one. It said, "I hope today gives you the kind of family feeling I spent too many years making you earn." I kept the card. I did not invite her. Both choices were true. Dylan asked whether he could give a speech. I said no. "Good call," he replied. Dad asked whether he should walk me down the aisle. No. His face showed pain. Okay. Daniel and I walked in together because neither of us wanted the ceremony to begin with one person being transferred to another. Dad sat in the second row and cried. Afterward, he told me, "I was hurt you didn't ask. Thank you for not turning that into my problem. I'm learning." 2 years later, Daniel and I became foster parents to a 15-year-old girl named Maya, whose father was incarcerated and whose mother had entered long-term treatment. Maya had learned a version of usefulness different from mine. She cleaned compulsively, offered babysitting before adults asked, and tried to refuse new clothes because she did not want to cost too much. The first month, she broke a lamp and packed half her suitcase before telling us. "Where are you going?" I asked. "I figured you'd want me out." "Because of a lamp? People say it's never about the one thing." My chest tightened. "Sometimes that is true. This time, it's a lamp." "You're not mad?" "I'm annoyed because I liked the lamp." "You are still staying." She stared at me for a long time. Safety becomes believable only through repetition. Months later, she forgot a chore, argued about curfew, and told me I was unfair. The placement remained. She slowly stopped offering labor as rent for affection. Watching her heal taught me something about myself I had understood intellectually but not emotionally. A child's job is not to become convenient enough to deserve permanence. Maya eventually reunified with an aunt after nearly 2 years, but we remained part of her life. At graduation, she gave me a card. You were the first adult who let me be difficult without making me disposable. I kept it beside Grandma Eleanor's birthday note. Patricia and I finally met 8 years after the phone call. Not because relatives pressured me. They had mostly stopped. Not because she became ill. She was healthy. I woke one morning and realized the idea no longer frightened me. We chose a cafe in New Braunfels halfway between our homes. Daniel knew where I was but did not attend. Patricia arrived early. Her hair was shorter. She wore simple clothes rather than the carefully styled outfits she used to photograph. We stood awkwardly. "Can I hug you?" she asked. "No, okay." We sat. For several minutes, neither of us knew what to do with our hands. She said, "I'm not going to ask you to forgive me." "Good. I want to answer anything you ask. Why did you dislike me?" Her face broke immediately. "I did not dislike you, Mom." She looked down. "I disliked how I felt around you. Explain." "You noticed things. You remembered promises. You asked why. Dylan let me feel generous. You made me feel accountable. So you punished me." "Yes." "Did you love me?" "Yes." "Did you enjoy me?" She cried. "Not enough." That answer hurt more than burden had after 8 years. It was also honest. "Why did you keep taking money?" "Because I believed parents were entitled to benefit from a successful child. And because accepting money, let me pretend, your competence came from how well I raised you." "Did you believe I was lonely?" "Yes." "Did you use that?" "Yes." "Would you do it again?" "No." "Why?" "Because I no longer believe access proves love." We spoke for 2 hours. She did not ask to visit my home. Did not ask about grandchildren. Did not ask whether she could attend holidays. At the end, she said, "What happens now? I don't know. Can I write once in a while, maybe every few months? No family pressure. No medical emergencies routed through me. No money." Okay. We did not hug. Our relationship remains smaller than the word mother usually suggests. We exchange occasional letters. One lunch a year. She has never met Maya because Maya had reunified before our meeting, although she knows about her. She has visited my house once, for 2 hours, after asking. She brought no overnight bag. She commented on none of my spending. When Dad later had knee surgery, she informed me, "Your father has surgery, March 8. Dylan and I have transportation and recovery covered. No action needed. I thought you would want to know." I almost cried at those 3 words. No action needed. Healthy information does not automatically contain an assignment. My parents remained married, surprisingly. Their marriage became less comfortable after the sale because money exposed disagreements they had postponed. Dad admitted debt. Patricia admitted how much she had spent trying to maintain a social image. They downsized again voluntarily several years later into a one-bedroom condo. They could afford travel occasionally when they saved. Dad manages his own medical appointments. Patricia learned online banking. Neither died from adult responsibility. Dylan's marriage also survived after nearly collapsing. He eventually sold his small event company and accepted a leadership position with a hotel group. He told me the first steady paycheck felt like failure. Then he realized paying bills on the same date every month created a kind of dignity no dramatic launch had provided. He and Camille have one son. I am his aunt, not an emergency bank. When they asked me to become his godmother, I said yes, only after asking what they expected. Dylan laughed. Birthday cards, moral guidance, and maybe one embarrassing speech when he's 18. No tuition. Deal. Last Thanksgiving, 13 years after the phone call, Daniel and I hosted 21 people. Nina and Jordan. Maya and her aunt. Dad. Dylan. Camille. And their son. Rebecca. Several friends. Patricia was invited for dessert only, a boundary she accepted without argument. That fact alone would have seemed impossible years earlier. Dinner contained no assigned family hierarchy. People sat wherever conversation made sense. Dad sat beside Maya's aunt discussing knee rehabilitation. Dylan carved turkey badly. His son dropped cranberry sauce onto the rug and immediately looked terrified. It's a washable rug, I said. The child relaxed. I recognized that reaction. Before dessert, someone suggested a photograph. My body still tightened slightly around family pictures. Daniel noticed. Private? He asked. Private. We used a timer. Dylan stood near the edge until I waved him closer. Dad did not assume he belonged beside me. Nina squeezed in on the other side. Maya arrived late and jumped behind us. The first photograph caught 3 people blinking. The second had a child looking away. The third showed everyone laughing because Daniel nearly knocked over the phone stand. We kept the third. Patricia arrived at 7, with 1 pie from a bakery. She had texted first, "Is dessert still okay?" I replied yes. She entered without scanning the house for evidence of what I could afford. She greeted people, ate pie, spoke with Maya, and left at 9 because that was the agreed time. At the door, she asked, "Can I say something?" My body tightened. Yes. Thank you for inviting me for 2 hours. That was all. No sadness about missing dinner. No reference to the past. No request for Christmas. You're welcome. She left. Dylan helped me carry plates to the kitchen. Weird night, he said. Good weird? Quiet weird. He dried a plate. Do you ever think about Grandma's house? Yes. Regret selling it? I considered. I regret that the house had to become part of the lesson. That sounds like yes. Sometimes, but keeping it would have meant preserving a battlefield because it belonged to someone I loved. Do you miss Mom and Dad living there? No. Do you miss us before everything happened? I looked at him. I miss the version where I didn't know. Was that version happier? Less painful, not safer. He nodded. Would you do it the same way? That question has followed me for years. Selling while they were away looked ruthless from the outside. I would still end the housing arrangement. I might tell them before closing now that I'm no longer afraid of being manipulated face to face. So you regret the surprise? Part of me does. Why? Because secrecy gave me control, and I enjoyed that control more than I admitted. I was protecting myself, but I was also angry. Does that make it wrong? Not entirely. People can make a necessary decision imperfectly. That is another thing therapy taught me. Healing does not require turning yourself into the flawless victim. I had anger. I wanted my parents to feel the shock of discovering the life they treated as guaranteed was gone. I wanted Dad's confidence to break. I wanted Mom to understand that the daughter she called a burden had been carrying the roof over her head. Those desires were not spiritually pure. They were human. The important part was that I didn't destroy property, deny medication, strand them without shelter, empty their accounts, contact their employers, or publicly humiliate them for entertainment. I withdrew what belonged to me and allowed reality to replace subsidy. Their largest consequence was not losing Grandma's house. It was discovering how much of their preferred life had depended on a daughter they treated as emotionally optional. My largest victory was not the sale proceeds. It was learning that being needed had never been reliable evidence of being loved. Need says, "What can you do for me?" Love sometimes says, "I thought about you, even though I need nothing." Need panics when access closes. Love can hear no and remain. Need praises your strength because strength makes exploitation cheaper. Love notices when strength is exhausted. Need calls you responsible when it wants you to carry another person's consequences. Love asks whether you have room before handing you weight. My mother's cruelest sentence became one of the most useful truths anyone ever gave me. I did confuse being needed with being loved. She knew because she benefited from the confusion. Once I understood it, the entire family system changed. Some relationships ended. Some shrank. Some eventually rebuilt. My parents learned adult responsibility because I stopped interrupting consequences. Dylan learned that needing help did not automatically create my obligation. I learned that generosity becomes healthier when no remains possible. I still help people. I pay for dinner sometimes. I helped Dad locate a physical therapist after surgery. I bought Dylan's son a bicycle. I contributed to Maya's college books one semester after she asked whether it fit my budget. I support nonprofit programs through work. I give more freely now than when everyone expected it, because generosity without coercion does not leave resentment behind. Grandma Eleanor had tried to teach me that decades earlier. A door is useful because it can open and close. A home with no lock is not more loving. It is simply less safe. Family works the same way. Titles are not permanent keys. Mother, father, brother, daughter. Those words describe relationships. They do not eliminate consent. When Patricia eventually changed, what convinced me was not her apology letter. It was her ability to live with no contact after sending it. When Dad changed, it was not because he cried. It was because he stopped making his fear of losing me into my assignment. When Dylan changed, it was not